There's this idea in art that I've heard articulated a number of different ways. You've probably heard it too. It's going to be really familiar to you when I describe it. The version I'm going to go with, I heard put best by Mark Maron. And it's that sometimes you interact with a piece of art of some kind. He was talking specifically about music and movies. That's been my experience too, but I know that this can happen with any form of art. But the phenomenon that happens is sometimes you see something or you listen to something, and as he put it, it expands the aperture of your experience. It makes you realize that the camera lens of your emotional life can open wider than you even realized. There's more range on the viewfinder than you thought was possible. And once it's been opened up that wide, you can never really close it down again, because you're always looking for that next experience that is going to get the aperture open as wide as it got the first time you listened to Pink Floyd, or the first time you, in my case, watched The Princess Bride. And I have been thinking about The Princess Bride a lot the last couple of days for obvious reasons, because Rob Reiner and his wife Michele were killed under circumstances that seem really horrific from what we know right now. Not that there are non-horrific circumstances for that to happen, but I don't really want to talk about the circumstances of their death. I just want to talk about The Princess Bride, because the thing that I have been so moved by in the remembrances of Rob Reiner that have been pouring in all over social media and cable news and NPR is this phenomenon with Rob Reiner movies that when you think about his movies, there are these lines from the movies that leap to mind. In the case of The Princess Bride, it's As You Wish. And there's other ones, too. No More Rhymes Now, I Mean It. Anybody Want a Peanut? In the case of A Few Good Men, it's I Want the Truth. You Can't Handle the Truth. In the case of When Harry Met Sally, it's I'll Have What She's Having. And what's really special to me about the fact that it is lines from Rob Reiner movies that come flooding in a moment like this is that that's very different than him being memorialized in the popular imagination for all the awards he won or for all the technical achievements with the movie camera that he pioneered, or the kinds of accomplishments we could imagine an artist also being remembered for in the immediate aftermath of their death. And I'm not saying those would be bad things to be remembered for, but what's cool to me about the fact that Rob Reiner is being remembered for the fact that these lines reverberate in all of our hearts is that means that these movies and these characters in particular who said those lines, ever since we saw those movies, those characters have been alive in us somewhere. Like, once we met them, they stayed within us in this way. It's this, in my case, at least when it comes to The Princess Bride, this uncanny sense of warmth and comfort. And I remember feeling that way from the first time I saw The Princess Bride. I couldn't have been more than 8, maybe. And what I remember feeling when I watched The Princess Bride, to go back to that Mark Maron sense of the aperture opening, is that I wanted to feel the things that the characters in that movie felt. And it's the first time I ever felt that way. And the most basic example of that is it is the movie that made me want to fall in love. I wanted a love like Wesley and Buttercup. I wanted to feel the kind of total certainty that Wesley felt towards Buttercup, that it was like he was put on this earth to make her happy. But there were other kinds of love in that movie that I also wanted to feel. I wanted to feel the love between Miracle Max and his wife, this long-standing partnership that was as defined by attraction to each other as it was by being entertained by each other and looking out for each other. You remember the way Miracle Max's wife doesn't want Miracle Max to do certain things. She's like, no, you know what always happens when you do this. You can't let this happen again. And they really treasure each other, and you can feel it. And the other love that I remember really resonating with is the love between the grandfather and the grandson. Peter Falk is reading the story of The Princess Bride to Fred Savage, his grandson. And I do remember feeling not like the grandson, even though that would have been the age I was, but like the grandfather. Like there was something about the way that he just had this story that he was really excited to share. And then he really wanted his grandson to understand what this book was about. The line I remember the most that he says to the grandson is, "Who says life is fair? Life isn't always fair. Where is that written?" I've never forgotten that line. I've never forgotten that line. And I think about it all the time now when I am aware that life isn't always fair. But that's the first time I ever remember it being articulated to me. And what an important thing for a young person to hear in the context of a story that is also about love and adventure and sword fighting and loyalty and friendship. That's the other love I remember really connecting with in the movie, is the friendship between Fezzik and Inigo, and to a lesser extent Vizzini. Vizzini is kind of exploiting the other two, but you can tell there's an interdependency there. It is a movie, I was thinking today, sorry, microphone. It is a movie about imperfect people taking care of each other. And I can't think of a more beautiful and enduring message for a storyteller to leave behind. But this is the really big thing I've been thinking about today, is why does The Princess Bride elicit these feelings in me and millions of other people who love that movie? What is it about The Princess Bride? Because these are imperfect people in this movie. These are people driven by obsession, driven by jealousy, driven by rage, driven by insecurity, driven by shame. None of these are pretty emotions, but you can just tell in The Princess Bride that Rob Reiner loves all of these characters. Even Prince Humperdinck, who is this pompous buffoon, Rob Reiner gives them humanity in this movie. I think all the time about when Prince Humperdinck is going to get married to Buttercup, and he knows that Wesley is coming for her and that he doesn't have much time, and that if they can get to the end of the wedding, it will be official and they will be married in his mind, and then there will be nothing Wesley can do. And the priest, who, another set of lines that has echoed forever in my mind and a million other people's, is marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. And love, true love. And then Humperdinck goes, skip to the end. And it's not just that that's funny. That is funny. It's comedic. But it's also the fact that you see in that moment that Humperdinck knows his limitations. He knows that Buttercup will never love him as much as she loves Wesley. He knows that he is on borrowed time here. There is shame. There is this brutal self-awareness in that moment. And some of that, sure, is the way Chris Sarandon plays the role. But it's also in Reiner's directing that he would give Humperdinck that moment and give us that moment of self-recognition for Humperdinck. And I guess what I have been thinking today is that is the difference between an artist like Rob Reiner, whose stories live in people for an eternity after they see his movies, and other artists. A great artist is not just somebody who makes things, but somebody who makes things and has a really strong feeling about the things that they make, that they're trying to share with you. They're not just trying to give you this well-rendered artifact. They're trying to export something emotional that is inside them through the vessel of this well-made thing into your heart. And I don't think there were very, very many people who were better at that when it comes to filmmaking than Rob Reiner. And in closing, I guess I just wanted to share this memory that I have that I've been thinking about all day. And this is from maybe 10 years ago now. I went to a screening of The Princess Bride that was coinciding with Cary Elwes, who plays Wesley / the Dread Pirate Roberts. He had just written a book, Cary Elwes. And so in celebration of the book, there was a screening of The Princess Bride, and then he was doing a Q&A afterwards. And so the movie screens, and the movie is wonderful. And then afterwards, people are coming up to the microphone to talk to Cary Elwes. And he's giving all these really great memories from the set and talking about, what it was like to wrestle with the rodent of unusual size and questions that you can imagine people asking. And it was great. It was great. But the moment that really sticks with me is this woman came up to the microphone, and you could tell that she was just overcome. She could barely speak. She was so emotional. And she said into the microphone, I've been so sick. And this movie. And that was all she could say. She couldn't say anything else besides that. And Cary Elwes did not say a word. He jumped off the stage. He ran into the crowd, and he just embraced her. And everybody gave it a second of quiet, and you could see her kind of relax into this hug that he was giving her. And then everybody applauded, and I don't know what she was sick with. They didn't speak any further than that, but you could see how much comfort she got from this moment. And the thing is, this is no disrespect to Cary Elwes, because that was a really generous thing that he did. He read that moment beautifully. He gave her such an extraordinary gift. But she was hugging him as much as she was hugging Wesley. And she has that relationship with Wesley as much because of the way Cary Elwes played the role as she does because of the container around Wesley that Rob Reiner created. And I was just thinking today that moment was as much about her relationship with Wesley, the character, her relationship with Cary Elwes, the actor, as it was about Rob Reiner as a storyteller. I don't know his other movies as well as The Princess Bride, but I've been thinking so fondly of that movie today, and it will always make me think so fondly of him. And life isn't always fair.